I can use Pat Fitzgerald getting fired as an explanation of a lot of stuff. So, because I've been through it. I've seen it firsthand, been through it firsthand, so I don't think I'm far off here. So Northwestern fired their football coach, Pat Fitzgerald, who played at Northwestern, was a star player at Northwestern. So players had come forward claiming that hazing had been going on, and it went on to include, without going into all the details, because I'm somehow fixated on the purge masks in the locker room. That one's throwing me off. So it covered the gamut on the hazing. Spanking players naked in the locker room while wearing purge masks. And then it went on from there. A lot of nudity, a lot of spanking. Now, he said he didn't know. A couple of players said he did know. Northwestern, which doesn't care that much about football, but enough to pay him a lot of money. Northwestern had originally suspended him for 2 weeks without pay, hoping this would go away. The stories kept coming, and they got more bizarre and more bizarre, and then they ended up whacking him yesterday afternoon. The whole thing is ridiculous. The idea of hazing is ridiculous. The idea of the purge masks is ridiculous. The idea that this man, who's there working every single day, didn't know anything about it is pretty hard to believe. I find it hard to believe when somebody has purge masks laying around the locker room, somebody might say, that's weird, what's up with that? And then sooner or later, it might get to the head coach. I guess he's going to lawyer up, we'll see. So I don't know exactly what he did or didn't know. At some point when somebody says, hey, coach, there's some weird naked spanking going on in purge masks, you might think he would bring it up. For him to be oblivious is hard to believe. For anyone to think it's okay and cool and that's what people do, I'm here to tell you that's not what people do. I'm here to tell you. They don't. They don't. I don't know where you come from or what level of football you played, but I'm almost positive I've never known anyone who became a better football player because somebody spanked them in a purge mask. Doesn't happen that way. Usually just kind of like diet and practice and stuff like that and real talent. Okay, then I'm going to tell you exactly how this stuff works and what really matters here. And even at Northwestern, I'm going to tell you what really matters. This is ESPN college football host, sort of the voice of college football, to be honest with you, for some time. Very sensible guy, straightforward guy, does a good job. He is a co-host or host for ESPN. He hosts Game Day, has hosted Game Day for a long time. It's Reese Davis.
Reese, just your general analytical and emotional reaction to this story, which culminates in Pat Fitzgerald getting terminated.
John, I'm shocked by it, and as long as I've been around this sport, not much surprises me anymore. But had someone come to me the day before this story broke and said, there's about to be a story in the sport that involves hazing of a sexualized nature, and it's going to be, fairly rampant and known within the program. Give me 6 guys that you can guarantee it's not happening in their program. Pat Fitzgerald would have been on that list. It doesn't comport with what I've known of Pat over the years, yet the idea that this was not a secret in nature, that members of the football program for years and years had some knowledge of it, whether they thought it was something that was harmful or playful, is sort of doesn't matter at all. I'm really surprised that it was going on at Northwestern, and really shocked that it got to this point. I would like to have seen Northwestern be a little bit more forthcoming in the details of what that independent investigation unveiled. What exactly does it mean that the coaching staff had opportunity to know but didn't? Does that mean they turned a blind eye, which is unforgivable? Or does it mean that just because you're in charge, you're supposed to know everything, which is a much different standard to hold anyone to? Yet, when you're in charge of a program, you are responsible to some degree for everything that happens under your watch.
Right. College football coaches, as you know, they're basically presidents, GM, director of player personnel, and head coach. They're the whole thing. So what happens when this happens? The reverberations in the Northwestern football program, any program. How do you recover from this? What are the steps that Northwestern goes through as the season is, a little more than a month away?
it's almost impossible because that's an extraordinarily difficult place to win to begin with. I think it's something they've had maybe 5-10 win season, and Pat Fitzgerald has been part of 4 of them either as a player in the 90s or as a coach 3 times. Even under Pat Fitzgerald, they've had some terrible seasons, most notably last year. I don't know how they recover because they have to find a leader who understands Northwestern, can instill some of the values of the things that worked well while avoiding some of the pitfalls. You brought up an interesting point about coaches being CEOs, GMs, player personnel directors, and everything. Even if coaches don't know, because of that very thing that you mentioned, that does raise the bar for them in terms of their responsibility, because they are the ones who brought the players into the program, who perpetuated this alleged culture of hazing, which, according to what we've been told and read, dates back for quite some time. And obviously, I understand there's a very different perspective among some players on how they viewed this part of the Northwestern program. But I think it's obvious that now it has been extraordinarily damaging and has really wrecked Northwestern for the present and foreseeable future.
Okay, let me do what nobody else. That's all well said and very accurate and sensible and nice. You know what no one's talking about? Winning. Let me tell you how this works, okay? I don't care if there's purge masks or not. I don't care if there's naked spanking or not. I mean, I care. But let me tell you what the process is. Here's a good chance to point out the realities with college coaches getting fired, okay? There's almost always, and I say almost, I mean, if you've got an example and say, no, Ward, here was a winning coach and there was purge masks and naked spanking, go ahead. But I think I'm right about this. There's almost always an order of things and the connection to, ready for it, losing. I can tell you exactly how this works. Not the naked hazing with the purging, but coaches getting fired. So this is true even at Northwestern. Here's the way the process of getting fired works. Always, this is the way it works at football factories. Northwestern is not a football factory, but they do care about winning. Okay? They won 1 game last year, and it was in August. Don't lose sight of that. I know it's easy to get caught up in how ridiculous this story is. But please understand, whether it's Pat Fitzgerald and purge masks and naked spanking, or it's the next coach to get fired at a football factory, I will guarantee you it follows this process. Number 1, you don't win enough. Period. Then, when you don't win enough, you know what always happens? Scandal starts. Then scandal picks up steam. And then number 4, this is a straight process. And I'll tell you how it works and how the rich people get it going. So you don't win enough. Scandal starts. Scandal picks up steam. Scandals are then used as the reason for firing them. Because even though it is just to prove to you what a slimy, disconnected, hypocritical industry it is, nobody ever has the guts, and certainly not university presidents, who don't know what to do about Football Inc. They're terrified of it because rich men control it. But you know what they never do? Today I'm firing the coach because he lost too often. Have a nice day. It's always blanketed in scandal. Always put the scandal in it. You don't get fired when you're winning in their scandal. You get fired for losing, and then there comes scandal. Am I saying, Jeff, are you saying that Pat Fitzgerald would not have been fired had he won more at Northwestern? That is exactly what I'm saying. I don't care if he's in a purge mask spanking people. You don't get fired that way. They don't have the guts to fire you, because if you're a university president, I'll give you plenty of examples, my own experience. If Kirby Smart at Georgia today, tomorrow, and every other day were lining up players naked with them in a purge mask and spanking them, do you know what would not happen? He would not get fired. If he spanked them in a purge mask, filmed it spanking them in a purge mask, he would not get fired. Got it? Do you understand what matters? Everything else is, I'm not saying it's made up. I'm saying don't win enough, scandal picks up steam, scandal is used as the reason to whack you. Every time. I mean, I'm going to say every time. Maybe you got an exception here. So that's the reason for firing him, is the scandal. I mean, yeah, it's stupid. Yes, it's ridiculous. Absolutely. He wouldn't be getting fired had they won more. And that's true of the next coach. And I'll run down all the examples because there are plenty. Northwestern didn't win a game since August. They went September through December losing every single game. As is almost always, I'm going to say always the case, he was fired because, this is what they say, I've been a part of this, he lost control of the team. If A&M could come up with a scandal tomorrow to whack Jimbo Fisher, trust me, that thing will follow this exact path. And when he does get whacked, it won't be because somebody says, the guy didn't win enough and he made a bunch of money. They'll say he lost control of the team, we lost discipline, we blah, 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 blah. Some sort of righteous position that avoids saying the obvious, and that is, you know what, we lost all the time. It sucks. Georgia had a star player, as an example, okay? And I'm not saying they had purge mask spankings, but you know how many times I said the purge mask thing? I cannot get that out of my head. How do you leave the purge masks around the locker room and nobody says, hey, Coach, why do we have purge masks in our locker room? Yeah, good point. Georgia had a star player. He was drafted, number 8 or 9 by the Philadelphia Eagles. He left the scene of a car crash in which a staff member was killed. Left. Georgia has now had several players stopped and highlighted for, all sorts of traffic offenses, ticketed, some arrested, blah, blah, blah. If Kirby Smart had won 5 games last year, today or tomorrow, or what already happened, somebody with the university would have said, the scandal's out of control. He's lost control of the team. He's fired. A player could leave the scene of a crime. A Georgia player could leave the scene of a crime with a headless body in their car and the bloody knife in the seat next to them. And you know what wouldn't happen? He would not get fired. Oh, Jeff, that's outrageous. It is, because the Georgia basketball team had a murderer on their team. And guess what? The coach did not get fired, did he? Now, I think purge masks and spanking is pretty weird. I think murder is pretty serious. He didn't get fired, did he? Because they were expected to be a Final Four team. Had the Georgia basketball program, okay, let's just follow that path. Had the Georgia basketball program, because they had a player that was arrested and is sitting in jail for shooting a woman in the head. Their star player, who I don't think even missed a single game, their star player was not ultimately charged with a crime based on the technicality, but he got the text message to bring his teammate a gun, who then used it to shoot a woman in the head. That coach not only played him, that coach sure the heck didn't get fired, did he? Did he? Now, had the coach flamed out midway through the conference tournament, he would be fired, and they would have said, the program has lost control. He couldn't control the players. Look at it. It's out of control. It's out of control. He would get fired. Okay? Had they won 10 games all season and not look like a Final Four team, they didn't make it, but not look like a Final Four team, he would have been fired. I played for a coach that had 1 losing season, played for 2 or 3 national championships. The effort to get him fired went exactly like I just described to you. Rich alumni. I was a captain on the team the year that Fred Akers got fired. And rich alumni would ask me, well, they would always ask about scandal. Hey, you guys are losing too much. That was never said. We all understood it, but it was never said. Always asked about scandal. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, every other week, there's another story about a scandal. Again, trust me, scandals went on when I played on an 11-0 team. Dudes were getting thrown in jail right and left. The team was just as, quote, out of control at 11-0 as it was at 6-7. But the coach got fired at 5-7, 5-6 for not having control. And the whole storyline the entire year was, well, what about this guy got in trouble? This guy got in trouble. Well, what about academics? The year that I played on a team that played for a national championship, and I'm serious when I say this, the team grade point average could have been, I don't know that it was, but it could have been 0.0, and he would not have been fired. You think I'm kidding? It could be 0.0. Every guy could have missed every single class and not passed one single class. And the year we played for a national championship, the coach would not have been fired. Give me an example otherwise. Tell me last time a coach got fired for academic reasons. Go ahead, I dare you. Now, when the coach was fired, it was for academic reasons and losing control of the team. For all I know, the grade point average of the team was higher with a losing record than it was playing for a national championship, but he got fired because he lost control of the team. It is, I think most of you know this, but it's just, I just hope you find the hypocrisy in how just shady it all is when no one has the guts, particularly university presidents, have the guts to say, yeah, the hazing is stupid. The dude won one game, and that's not good enough, and that's why he's getting fired. And just remember, when someone's winning and this scandal goes on, they don't get fired. They don't. I don't care how ugly it gets. They don't get fired. So then there's this other part of this story that just came out, and I found it interesting and pretty weird at the same time. And that is, the story is Northwestern, a few years ago, while Pat Fitzgerald was there. Like, this is Northwestern, okay? We're not talking about some junior college here. This is one of the 20 best schools in this country. And the players at Northwestern attempted to create a union. And they attempted to create a union that was going to spread throughout the country. And Pat Fitzgerald at the time was against it. Now, the argument is, Fitzgerald, a lot of people have brought up the fact that his program, his team was the one that tried to start a union. And the talk about creating players' unions has been around for a while. And I'll tell you what's most interesting about it. The big proponent of unionizing players? Nick Saban. Nick Saban. Now, it's not going to happen. Do I think that Pat Fitzgerald, had he been more open to the idea of players unionizing, would it have saved him now? Some people are arguing that. I don't believe that to be true. I bring it up because unionizing players is been talked about since I was playing. And it won't happen. It won't happen. And I'll tell you, more than anything else, there's only one thing that will create a union. Even though Nick Saban is out there saying these guys had to unionize, they had to do collective bargaining, blah, blah, blah. This is why I think Nick Saban is going to get out of the game before too long, because I just think he can't get along with it. But the reason why guys won't unionize, and I'm not a big fan of it, but the argument is they need to bargain more collectively. They're not going to unionize because they won't draw a hard line and say, I'm not playing. They're not willing to say, I'm out, I'm sitting down, I'm not playing today unless you meet my standards, because they need the job. That opportunity to get to the NFL means more than whatever they can collectively bargain. It means more than their health. There's only one thing that ultimately leads to a union, and I still think it's probably far off: concussion lawsuits. That would be the one thing that gets them collectively together. And I don't think it happens. But that's the one way, even though they tried at Northwestern under Pat Fitzgerald, it's the one way they ever unionize. Now, these are sort of separate subjects, but the fact that Northwestern had players trying to unionize has sort of made its way through this story as well.